I'm Angelina Williams. I'm the program manager at the Guidance Center.
How you guys doing? My name is Stevie McBride. I am a trauma-informed consultant here at the Guidance Center.
And I am a licensed clinical social worker.
I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist.
I'm also a Black woman that is a mother of a Black son.
I am definitely and obviously a Black man. So Angelina, I guess to just pop off this conversation, how you doing? How are you doing?
You know, Stevie, that is such a hard question to answer because it always puts me in the position of deciding, am I going to answer? Am I going to give the answer that, is comfortable for everyone? Or do I give the answer that is true to what's going on in my spirit, what's going on in my mind? So I think in this moment, I'll share both.
Please do. We need to hear that.
In this moment, I am hopeful and excited that we're having this conversation today, and that we work at an agency that's providing this opportunity as well as many other opportunities. In my spirit, I am heavy. There is just so much going on in our world that is impacting me as a leader, as a woman, as a mother, that I don't know how to feel sometimes. And I fluctuate between feeling hopeless and helpless and feeling activated and encouraged, and everything in between there,
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you the same.
Oh, that's
what's
loaded.
on your heart? Where are you in this moment? How are you?
As a professional, my job is to be hopeful, always looking towards the future, looking for change. But I definitely have to agree with you on the heaviness. I just think of recent events. I felt overwhelmingness of weakness. And at some point, I felt powerless because in everything that's going on, it's like it's devastating seeing these things happen right before your eyes. I mean, we know our history, yes, right, of slavery and the injustice, but to see it continue and it's 2020, it makes my heart ache, literally, like to see Black men being gunned down, like Rayshard Brooks on June 12th, and then to see it happen to George Floyd for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, that he went without air. And this is, it's more than just an awakening. It's something that's deep, that it hurts, and it's a pain that I can't describe, because it could have been me, first and foremost. And then it could have been my brother, my cousins, uncle, anybody. And to see, like, no matter what level of profession you are, when you are still in your Black skin, there's already a preset judgment on you just going out in everyday life. And I'm on guard. I'm not gonna lie. I was telling my wife now when I went to Seal Beach for a run this morning, I'm on guard. I'm not in a comfortable area, but I'm close to it because I want to go for a run. But I shouldn't be on guard. I shouldn't feel that way just going for a run. But I have to be aware of everything that is going on. So, I mean, yeah, it's hard. It hasn't been an easy road.
Yes. And you're right. You shouldn't have to be on guard. You shouldn't have to be uncomfortable or consider how you're perceived. We should all be able to be perceived as human first.
Exactly. And that phrase always comes up, all lives matter. And I'm not blasting that like some people I see, but there's a point where you have to start believing Black Lives Matter first, and then all lives matter. And I know it's rough taking it there, but I'm just being real because my life matters. And I don't know if people actually even see that. Like my life actually matters because you see all lives matter first. And I want to believe that. But until I start seeing that a Black life matter, my life matter, my brother's lives matter, then I'm kind of stuck where I am right now.
Right, right.
So,
And I think I would want to add to that that all Black lives matter,
all
because
right.
what you just mentioned, like regardless of your profession or the status that you've achieved, all of our Black lives matter. It doesn't matter if you have made mistakes in your past,
True.
or if are the championship player on an NBA team
Hmm.
and you're making everyone a lot of money. Everyone within that range matters.
Of
And
course.
so to have to validate that your life matters even when you've made a mistake, when you've um, maybe broke a law or otherwise, or if you're a child or whatever the circumstance is, that makes absolutely no sense to have to validate your right to be appreciated and valued as a human being, as a whole human being.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree with you when you say that. And when you mention just the concern doesn't decrease when you've achieved a certain level of education.
Yeah.
And so I do want to just maybe bring it there for a moment, because you mentioned you are a licensed professional and you work to inform people about trauma. I know you work within the schools, so you have
Yes.
a very significant role, but yet you still feel burdened by the experience of your skin. So I'm just wondering what brought you to this field in the first place, and then maybe continue from there.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. So, growing up, I grew up in Compton, California. I know I kind of did this in a video last year for Minority Mental Health Month, but I grew up in Compton. And in my city, there wasn't a lot of, I guess, positive male role models. There was a lot of strong Black women, aka Jelena. So, um, and my mom was a strong Black woman. I was fortunate to grow up with both my parents, which was rare growing up in Compton. I said this before. I seen a lot of my peers grow up, being raised by grandparents, or being raised just by a single parent. And our my role model, one of my role models was my father, of course, but then you would see a lot of these coaches who are African American or Black coaches who would kind of take the lead and try to give guidance, but they were only limited for so much information that they could give. And so there was no therapist running around school looking for their clients or anything like that growing up. I went to Dominguez High School. And so it's like, we didn't have that.
Mhm.
And I saw an avenue where I can go back to Compton and make a change. And I've definitely had that opportunity to give advice, to let people know kind of like my journey, building that rapport, and just giving them, life lessons before they had to go into a gang,
Mhm.
or if they were an athlete, to be smart with what the moves they make. Um, and so that's kind of like why I got into the field, because I knew I could go back and help.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
And
So,
we are so glad that you did.
oh, yeah, well, thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, going back to that same question, like, yo, why'd you do this? Why'd you get into this field?
Well, for me, I think I was that student in school that um, thrived, and school was a safe space for me
Hmm.
because home and my personal life wasn't. My mother suffered from mental illness um, from the age of 19, and she had me when she was about 34. Um, and so, actually, when she was born, she left the hospital. She had no understanding or awareness that she had just had a baby.
Oh.
And left the hospital. And because of that, I was initially put in foster placement. But thankfully, my grandparents felt it was really important for me to know my family. So they took all the steps to make sure that I could live with them, and then eventually where they had guardianship over me. So I was raised by my grandparents, but I always had interactions with my mother because my grandmother was her conservator. But growing up, I watched her suffer and live a life with very little help. And that greatly impacted me as a child growing up, trying to figure out my identity. I didn't know who my father was, so that also left a void for me. So on the outside, to everyone else, I was this smart little Black girl that did well in school, that was a part of different clubs after school. But inside, I was really alone and confused and depressed and had so many question marks about who I was and if I was lovable, or just so many things. And so I really felt like if I had someone at school that saw me or saw that, because people knew my story. My mother would show up at my school sometimes, not really sure and in touch with reality, and everyone knew that she was my mom. And so people knew my story, and no one took the moment to stop and pause and say, let's check in and see how this child is doing. So that's why I was really drawn to mental health services within the schools, which is where I started my career. And I just continue to grow within this field and continue to see the need. But that's what initially brought me into the mental health field.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for sharing that, because that was a lot of disclosure. I had no idea of your story, of why you came into the field, but that's good. I'm glad you are out there, but now you're a program manager.
Yes.
So you're making sure everybody else is on their P's and Q's, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So I know I'm about to hit you with the hard one. I'm about to hit you with the hard question. So, what are some of your thoughts about the racial injustice and police brutality, in spite of everything that's going on? Like, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts. I have to take a moment and just really let that sit in, because I have a lot of thoughts, right?
Yeah, of course.
And it's just like, how do I narrow it down to what I feel is important for other people to hear? And my thoughts are, injustice anywhere, in any setting, for any group of people is wrong, period. And we have to really understand the origins of the police department. And if we did, I think that people that express Blue Lives Matter over Black Lives Matter to try to have that elevated over the movement of Black Lives Matters would maybe understand that Blue Lives, that's a shirt. Like, it's a shirt that you can take off. And being Black is not something you can remove. It is who you are.
Exactly.
100% of the time. It's a part of your identity. It is the main identity that anyone ever sees when they look at you. But for police officers, they have so many other dimensions to who they are as a person. And it is not only defined by them being a police officer. And from my understanding and research, the police department was really created after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, well, actually 2 years later, after the last people that were enslaved were freed in Galveston, Texas, to ensure that there could continue to be free labor. So just imagine everyone is like, wow, we're free. We can go do as we please. But the federal government didn't give us any guidance on how do you feed your family? Where do you live? How do you survive now? And so they encouraged you to continue to work for your former master who was beating you or who wasn't treating you kindly or didn't care about the value of your life. They encourage you to continue to work for those
Mm-hmm.
people. And some decided, no, I'm not doing that. I'm running, I'm fleeing.
Yeah.
So they created laws that said, if you're unemployed, you're breaking the law, which then allowed the police to arrest those former slaves
Mm-hmm.
and bring them back. And then what do you do when you have been convicted? Now you have to perform free labor.
Yeah.
So if we understand the foundation and the origin of the police department, no one came and did some big reform and said, you know, the police department is really for this. No, it was always about protecting property because Black people were
For
considered.
private property. Exactly.
So if we understand that, and we understand there's never been an overhaul or huge reform, then we would understand that the way that the police department functions now needs to change, because
Mm-hmm.
the foundation of why they were even formed never changed. So I bring that up because, again, like I said, I have thoughts that take me all over, but I feel like the understanding and the education about the history of why our society functions the way that it does, understanding systematic racism and injustice is so important. So because I know that, I feel like we need reform. We need to change the way that we live. We need to change the way that we support one another.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me angry that other people don't see that they don't take the time to
Hmm.
pause and do research and understand why are people so upset? Like, if you can't pause to understand why we're upset that someone's life was taken, then you're completely missing the point.
You're missing it. And I definitely agree because it's the research, it's the education that you have to put behind yourself to get a grasp of what's going on in these times. Because, I mean, you can silent protest, you can walk, but if you don't understand what you're doing, and if you can't talk to your neighbor and explain it just as eloquently as you did, then what's the point? You have to be able to comprehend and understand the foundation of what is happening and what has happened over the years with Black people. So I definitely agree with that.